Hello, everyone. Welcome to this broadcast today about AI and ethics. I'm Vince. I'm the main organizer of machine learning in healthcare, located in Berlin and in Budapest. And I welcome everyone who is watching right now, and of course, everyone who is going to join a little bit later. Two things that I would like to announce. Please leave your questions in the comments on YouTube. We are going to check them at the end of the panel, and we were going to try to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. And I would also like to announce that we will actually also suggest to meet after the event for a networking session in another tool, and we'll post the link to this meeting room at the end of the panel. And by this, I would like to give basically the microphone to Nicholas.
Thank you very much, Vince. Thank you for everybody watching us right now, the ones who will be coming later, and even the ones that are going to grab this on YouTube in a couple of weeks' time. It is a big pleasure to be here together with our partners from machine learning in healthcare. My name is Nicholas Bersoto. I am the organizer of meetup.ai Berlin, and I'm very, very excited to be bringing together with Vince one of our favorite topics, which is ethics in AI. We have a great panel organized, maybe the best panel that we ever had on this topic. So I don't want to take too long before we can actually properly start this. Thank you very much, Vince, for inviting us, and thank you for everybody that is joining us right now. So shall we open up the panel and bring up the panelists?
Absolutely.
Hello, hi everyone. I will be making the introductions right now. So to my right, I have Delfina Belli, who is an AI policy researcher and project manager at the Future Society. She focuses on AI ethics and governance research and organizational operations. She has degrees in international economic policy from the Sciences Po in Paris and in global governance from the University of Rome Vergata. Then below, I have Idoia Ana Salazar, co-founder and president of the Observatory of Social and Ethical Impact of Artificial Intelligence, Odisseia. She is a principal investigator on SIMPAR, the research groups about the social impact of artificial intelligence and robotics. She's a professor at the CU São Paulo University and the author of the books, The Myth of the Algorithm, Tales and Truths of Artificial Intelligence, Revolution of Robots, How Artificial Intelligence and Robotics Affect Our Future. She's also a founding member of Springer AI and Ethics Journal and a member of the Global AI Ethics Consortium. Then on my left, I have my very good friend and expert, Dr. Vince Madai. He's a senior medical AI researcher at the Charité in Berlin, focusing on the development and translation of AI in healthcare from the clinical setting to from research to the clinical setting. And in AI ethics, he's also the chief science officer of AI for Medicine, a data analytics and personalized medical AI solutions company based in Berlin. And currently, he's the scientific lead of the Charité Lab for Artificial Intelligence in Medicine, Prediction 2020, and the Precise 4Q project. And then finally, I have Inga Strumke. She has a PhD in using machine learning particle physics. She has previously worked in PwC, focusing on algorithm auditing, and is currently a postdoctoral researcher on explainable AI at the Simula Research Laboratory. She argues for using AI for good, which is closely linked to our understanding of what AI actually is. She has received the prize for outreach from the University of Bergen and has been elected one of the top 50 women in tech in Norway. So this is the very, very heavy hitters that we have in the panel today. I'm extremely excited to start. And so that we don't lose any more time, let's jump straight up for the first question, starting with Vince on my side, then Delfina, then Idoia, then Inga. What is the most pressing ethical issue in AI in 2021? Vince?
So in my opinion, the most pressing issue is not a specific ethical issue, but the issue that I think we really, really need to start acting rather than just talking. So don't get me wrong, I'm really, really happy to be here. I'm really, really happy about this great panel that we could put together today. And I think that still also many people need to hear about pressing ethical issues. But on the other hand, I think we will also realize today that many of the issues are well known. And while we are still debating them, actually bad algorithms or bad models are used in the world to actually lead to really bad outcomes already. You probably hear about them from us today. And I really think that this should be the pressing issue in 2021 to really start acting. That's my.
Delphina?
I could use one word, only one would be inequality, but in a few more words, I'd say that COVID-19 has shed more light on global inequalities in many areas.
Delphina, sorry, could you come a bit closer to the computer?
Can you hear me now? Better? Any better?
Yeah, a bit better, yes.
Okay, great. I was saying one word would be inequality, but if I could use more, I'd say that COVID-19 has shed more light on many areas that include technology and AI related to inequalities, and they vary along the lines of gender and ethnicity and even income. And there are specific areas which have shown a striking increase, like the deepening of the pre-existing digital divide or the differences in access to technologies, which prevent people from benefiting fully from what AI has to offer. But also because the pandemic has pushed us to digitalize education, work, and even services, we also see amplified all of those systematic and systemic issues that unfortunately are very present in our societies. So, you know, if we wanted to get better, and I'm one of the hopeful people on the in the field, I guess, I think we should implement tools like transparency frameworks or reporting standards, and I guess we'll discuss this later, but ethically designing algorithms or having more diverse teams that actually develop those.
We're definitely going to approach that point in bias in a second. Idoia, what about you?
Okay, I totally agree that this is the year in which we have to pass into action. We should, of course, we have to keep investigating about ethics and AI, but we really have to start doing practical things in every cases that we can find in the different applications that we have in every company and every organization. I really think that it's time to approach every one of these cases of use personally, personalize every approach, ethical approach in these companies. And it's time to also to that these people in these companies that uses or buy artificial intelligence algorithms or develop artificial intelligence algorithms start to realize that there is a need of thinking on ethics and responsible AI. It's not a matter of just thinking about technique, but it's time to see what is going to what do we have to think about the data that you are using for these algorithms. It's time to see what is going to the impact that this algorithm is going to have after when we use these algorithms. And this is, we have to think on practical solutions for this. It's not a matter of keep talking, as Vince was talking at the beginning. We should keep talking, of course, but it's time to come into action right now. If not, maybe we keep thinking about the future, what is going to happen in the future. It's going to be maybe too, I mean, we really need, it's going to be too late. I mean, this is now, the moment is now to start thinking about that. So there has been many approaches. We are going to think about that. You know, last year, the European Commission launched the white paper that started to be pretty realistic about the legal thing, about the different laws that we could have about with this technology, with artificial intelligence. And I'm talking about that they were being pretty realistic because they were thinking about putting this legislation into specific cases of use or in specific areas, high risk areas and low risk areas, and they started to personalize also in specific cases of use, like for example the facial recognition or the autonomy of the artificial intelligence algorithms when talking about legislation. So I think this is a pretty practical approach, and I really believe that this 2021 will be the year of the realistic things, the good things about ethics
the practical side.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's very, very nice.
And also last thing, and also the year of the different seals and quality certificates of algorithms of AI. I think this year they are going to be appearing quite a lot in the different countries, different certificates or seals of quality of different algorithms of AI. I think this would be the year for that.
Nice.
We hope so.
Well, we'll see. Inga, what about you?
Yeah, I I don't know if I believe it, but I certainly do hope it. And I also kind of believe or hope that that we're going to start having kind of hard limits. So kind of doing for AI and AI and ethics what we don't kind of managed or dare to do for the climate because it's expensive and unpopular, but setting kind of absolute borders and limits for what's allowed and what's forbidden. And now I know that deciding on kind of what's the correct ethics, is it virtue ethics or consequentialism or deontology, is not obvious, and we don't know. We've never managed to figure it out, but we kind of can't wait for the wonders of the universe to be solved before we start making legislation. So I think maybe if we can just kind of start making rules, then at least we'll have something to discuss, and then maybe the rules won't work, but then at least we'll have something to kind of talk about. Now, I personally am not a fan of ethical guidelines and white papers, unfortunately, because I mean we all agree that we want to be nice and not bad, and nobody's going to disagree with a white paper on ethics, but to me that's kind of just a shortcut to ethics washing. No, but we have ethical guidelines, but yeah, so I mean you go and fire ethics researchers, shots fired. And concretely, I think that kind of the EU is taking a stance on privacy. Privacy is closely related also to AI and ethics, not the same thing, related. And I think that the EU is going to see a level of lobbying previously never seen before. Lobbying kind of happens more in the US, but now, of course, the big, 4 or 5 or what they are now, Amazon, Google, Apple, and co, of course, would like to know before legislations are passed what's going to happen. So there's going to be more political pressure. So it's going to be interesting in any regard.
Definitely, it's going to be an extremely interesting year. And I think that right now we already took some of the main points of what the ethical issues on privacy, on auditing, on social impact, and even on the trade-offs of what ethics actually implies in the AI development. Those are all topics that we're going to start, where we're going to talk in this panel. But before we start, I think it's a very, very important part of ethics to actually understand ethics in AI, to actually understand what's in play, and maybe to understand how to communicate what is in play. So Delfina, I know that you have done work in the case of AI narratives. Could you explain to us a bit more what you see there and why is it so important?
Yeah, for sure. Can you hear me a bit better now with my microphone?
Very good.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I guess it's really critical to understand the different perception different stakeholders hold about AI, and this is why narratives are extremely important. I guess there is a wide amount of people that have in mind these Terminator killer robots kind of scenarios. Some have the robots are going to take over all of our jobs. Some more moderate foresee actual cooperation between man and machine, and others have this completely opposite end of the spectrum idea of the supernatural, all-knowing AI system, right? So I guess we're seeing a contrast between two very different notions: the AI as a god, as an ideology, and AI as a tool, as a technological tool. And I think that we need to create alternative to this AI ideology system. And it's quite easy if you start focusing on the fact that there are people involved when we deal with artificial intelligence. AI does not exist in its own vacuum. It is very much a product of its human and social economical context and relies on human data. So, and this is probably one of the first things I've learned when I started working in the field, is that AI is not so artificial and not so intelligent. So it is man-made, and it can perform very well very specific tasks, right? So the issue is not only bringing a human bias into the systems with the problems with the data, with how it's collected, with systemic issues, with the way the system is built. It's, we don't have to think of silos. We have to think as a whole process. But also the issue is that we take the output of those systems as confirmed credibility to the bias we input in them, right? And this creates very dangerous echo chambers, in my opinion. Of course, there are virtuous examples of narratives, like there's a very strong civic feeling in Taiwan around civic tech communities. But I guess to summarize this point, we should aim at having people view AI as a tool that can empower us to make better decisions, rather than this all-knowing substitute to mankind, let's say. If that makes sense.
And Idaya, reading my mind, because you were the one that I was going to call up for this. So what do you want to say?
Yes, Delfina, I wanted to say something, because I also believe that it is very interesting to focus and to talk a lot about this, about what you just said about naming the AI as a tool, not as another thing, because I also give classes at the university, as Nico says, and many of my students and many people, many regular people that I talk to, they still believe in AI like a super thing that is. I mean, it's not. I mean, I always tell the same thing to my students. Humans, we as humans, has invented throughout our history different technological tools to help us in the different things that we had to do in that historical moment. For example, during this industrial revolution, we invented the trucks. During another moments of history, we invented another things. Nowadays, we have like so much data all around us that we need specific tools to deal with all this data and to seize all these data and to do many good things, many beneficial things for humans. So we should be knowing we should be keeping in mind, and I say we as the whole society, not just professionals, we should keep teaching society that AI is just a tool. I mean, it's a tool that a human has to use to benefit him or herself, and do not try to put like different characteristics of humans into this tool, because at the end, it is just a tool that we as humans, as we have done in other moments of history, we have to do it to benefit ourselves. If we as humans put negative things into this tool, that is up to us in this moment,
Exactly.
So,
maybe I can add to this very quickly.
And we should be thinking about ethics of humans, not about ethics of machines and these kind of things. I think it's important.
That's a very good point. Vince, what do you want to add?
Just wanted to add, and all this should also really start with the expressions. So really the terms that we are using. Of course, it's natural that people who hear first time about artificial intelligence, that they might be scared. If they hear about machine learning. So machines learn and then they are intelligent artificially. If you think about the paradigm which is mostly used in healthcare, which is the supervised machine learning. So I have just an input, I have an output, and the algorithm just learns simply a mapping, and there's absolutely no intelligence involved. We could call this mindless mapping. And we could just really use this term. And then you go to people and ask, are you scared of mindless mapping? And then many would say, I guess not, because it's mindless mapping. But in the end, it's exactly the same thing. And it's very simple, because even now after I said it, you can even test it on yourself. You can say artificial intelligence, what that evokes in yourself and what mindless mapping evokes. So terms matter. And these terms are not optimal. So, and they influence the narratives.
And I'm gonna hold Vince there, because I have something for him exactly on that point. And I just want to say, for everybody that has worked in a startup, you know that narratives matter. You know how important it is to be telling a specific story when you're looking for funding, when you're looking for employees. And narratives also matter in a point that we're going to talk in a short bit, which is regulation and politics. How something is framed, it's very connected to how something will be regulated. Something that is scary is supposed to be regulated. Something that is less scary, maybe we're not so worried. Idoia, you raise your hand, and then after that, I would like to ask Inga if she has any points on this whole narrative debate. I know she's passionate about understanding AI and making AI understandable. So Inga first, Idoia first, and then Inga, please.
Okay, just one point. I think the difference between this technology and the other technology that in this about what I just said before, it is that it's in the people imaginary, like in their minds, these robots and this artificial intelligence, because they have seen it in the movies or in the literature before. And this is something, I mean, these people, society in general, didn't see that the other technologies that were emerging before in their mind, they didn't imagine these technologies before in their minds. But nowadays we have like some of these technologies, these robots and this AI that this regular society have seen in the movies doing so scary things, and they nowadays they see it in real life, you know. So I think that's why it is really necessary a good education and a good term definition to give society in order for them to not be so scared of this.
That's a great point.
It's very necessary to educate society because of that. It's very necessary. Yes.
So Inga, what about you?
Well, I kind of want to nuance this whole should we be afraid of AI a bit, because of course I'm not afraid of linear algebra and information representation either, but I am afraid of economical and political power balance, right? And I mean, if you look at the industrial revolutions that we've had, or the technological revolutions that we've had, the first industrial revolution was kind of, all in all, it was good news. I mean, cars eventually came out of it, but it wasn't good news for the people at that time necessarily, not all the people. And I mean, we still see kind of the effect of the first industrial revolution on the world now. I mean, crappy conditions for people who are not as fortunate as we are. So that was just the first technological revolution, and I don't think we can say that it went like splendidly. Now, the second technological revolution, that was electricity, right? That was much more enabling for us. So it didn't as much replace us as it just enabled us to do our stuff better. Now, AI, or the rise of AI, has kind of been coined the fourth industrial revolution. So you can kind of ask, okay, so is it going to replace or enable us? Like in the long term, how is it going to change our lives? And we kind of can't argue that some machine learning models just make decisions better than we do. I mean, they beat us at chess, and they're more efficient than we are. And to be a bit provoking, I would like to kind of say that if you can formulate your problem as an optimization problem, machines are going to beat us. I mean, sooner or later, they just are. So maybe kind of machines can even like solve the good life better than we can, and maybe they can screw us up way better than we can. So it's kind of, I mean, it's definitely up to us somehow, but I would say there is something to be afraid of.
Yeah, it's a very good one.
I'd like to just maybe say something. I absolutely agree with what Inga just said, and I just think having the right narratives helps to fight the right battles. This is exactly what this is about, and I think we're probably at a certain point, and we already heard about bias, it was already mentioned, and I think I completely agree that we are now at the crossroads where we basically have to, where it will be decided whether this technology actually will, as Inga said, enable us, or if it will become a problem. And maybe just very briefly about this, one of our big problems here is automation bias. Let's assume people make decisions without AI, without any machines. And some people are biased, some people are not biased. Actually using an unbiased, well-developed tool, suddenly the biased people would use an unbiased tool. And because automation bias is this thing where people start trusting the output of a machine, suddenly actually biased people would become in effect, they would become less biased. However, if we use biased tools, then we see exactly the opposite. Even unbiased people start using biased tools and start making biased decisions. So actually everything is going to get worse. And this is exactly this crossroads. And by talking about the right things, talking about what is actually wrong, we can actually start educating people. That's where the education comes in again, and say, this is the problem. This is what you should be afraid of. You should be afraid of that in tomorrow's interview, they're actually going to use facial recognition on you to decide whether you're going to get that job. It's just yesterday I read that one company had to stop that now, but they were using that. And this is scary because it's most likely not unbiased.
Before I take your point, Idoia, I think it's interesting also to remember that this has happened before with other technologies, right? The whole argument from Delphina about not becoming an ideology, it's very similar to what happened in blockchain as well, where people used to joke that this is a religion and not a technology. There was a lot of value in it, but the hype and the protection of like, this is a way of life, this is everything else, did create a bit of a problem for people trying to create products for certain kinds of industries, where people could not disconnect what was a Bitcoin from what was blockchain. There's a lot of people that said that nuclear energy suffered from the same thing, that they had many advantages at the time, but because it was connected with nuclear weapons or the risk of something else, it also could not advance. And even when you think about how many people died because of nuclear accidents, and imagine how many people die out of bronchitis or tuberculosis because of the amount of CO2 that we put in, is just not the same narrative. One is much more scary and powerful, and the other one seeps away through everything that we're doing. Idoia, I'm gonna give it to you that you had a point, and then Vince, just to close up the point of narratives, I want you to already be thinking about this. What about healthcare? Isn't healthcare the most important field for AI and ethics today when it comes to narrative, when it comes to the importance of a message? So Idoia first, and then Vince.
Okay, I just wanted to remark what just being said about the crossroad. I think is we are in that crossroad, and it's very important to use the artificial intelligence as I said before as a tool. But there is another thing. Humans now have that decisions of using these machines not as or thinking about these machines as not as a substitute, but as a tool to help us in the different things that we are doing, the different labels that we would do. For example, with health, that is going to talk about Vince now. I'm sure, Vince, that you know about some studies that have compared or have done different studies about, for example, an algorithm doing trying to find cancer in some how do you call radiologies. Okay, the AI algorithm said that it was okay. The algorithm at the end was true I think it was around 85%, and a human was they did the same with humans, with doctors, and they were trying to find cancer in I think it was 79% of these radiologists, and at the end doing both, like a help, I mean putting both to collaborate, it was like a 99%. So at the end, we see how the key is to find, both working together, the machine and the humans working together to get the right thing. So it's not a matter of just looking for some machines like surpassing or like working better than one from the other. I think it's not a competition, but we shouldn't be competing with machines, but using these machines, these AI systems, as a help for the different professions that we have. And maybe we find that 99% of perfection in that.
Yes. So Vince, just before you start your point about healthcare, I just want to say to everybody watching that I'm looking at the comments and I'm already saving some of the great questions being sent, and you'll be sure to be listening about them very shortly. So Vince, what about healthcare?
It's very easy to think, in my opinion, that healthcare matters most, because the first impression is about the health of people, or some people might even die. I believe, however, that healthcare has one big advantage, and that is we already have very strong regulatory pathways in place. And if you actually look at what's happening in the EU, but also in the US, where regulatory bodies are really too slowly, in my opinion, but they are picking up on these issues. And the FDA just published 2 days ago the document where they say they will actually require good machine learning practices as being something that they're gonna look at in the regulatory processes. Then actually I have the feeling healthcare might be in a very good place in a few years. On the other hand, then you look at areas where simply no regulation exists because it was not necessary so far. And then we come back to, for example, what I mentioned, like hiring. And now just, companies just start using tools that are out there, and you start not getting jobs because the biased tools are used, and something is basically just wrong with the tool, and you don't get jobs that you should have gotten. And it's very, very tough to I don't remember who said lobbying, that it's very, very tough. Yes, Inga said it. We can imagine that there will be strong lobbying to prevent these regulations. And the problem is the impact is not as tangible as in healthcare. It's not like people are dying where there would be a huge scandal and everybody would say, oh my God, that's not this we can't tolerate. It's subtle. And then it's much easier for the lobbyists to start really lobbying, and just it becomes worse and worse and worse by the day, and we won't notice. So in that sense, I'm not sure healthcare is our biggest issue.
You're muted.
Nico, you're muted.
I can just start talking. Can I say something on the subtleness?
Of course you can. Yes. Maybe I was muted for a reason.
Yeah. God muted you. No. Well, I mean, when people ask me kind of what is peak AI, I answer, and that's not just to make myself interesting. I answer that's targeted marketing. Actually, that's peak AI in 2020 and 2021. Because I remember a publication by Facebook when they still published this kind of research. They showed that you're, well, I mean, they've kind of stopped. You can't blame them, which I think is a pity because it's still going on. Anyway, your Facebook behavior can be used to find out that you're depressed 3 months before it can be clinically detected. And I'm happy to share this paper with you. Now, imagine a person in a manic state, which is detected by Facebook, scrolling around and then offered a spontaneous trip to just the right destination, And I really think that incentivization, or manipulation, as I like to call it, is as dangerous kind of as climate change. Because we humans, we don't care about the truth. We care about worldviews, right? I can't take in the whole universe. I have to have my worldview. I have to limit it, right? This is my truth. And I really think that kind of automatic killer drones with facial recognition are not as scary as personalization. And just as Vince says, kind of in healthcare, at least we're awake, it's about my body. But when I'm scrolling around on a personalized Twitter feed with my own opinions fed back to me, I'm not awake. Right, so I think, again, what is scary, where lobbying is scary and all that is the areas where we're not really awake. And I really think that AI is better at manipulating than it is at anything else. And now, guys, I do AI research. I love AI and all that. But I really think that we do need kind of hard rules, even though it's going to be very, very unpopular for just the reasons that Vince stated.
I think that's a very, very good point about hard rules, and we're going to touch that. I just want to take it first, a question from Valerie Ross, because it's something that I want you, Inga, and Vince to talk first, and then if anybody else wants to grab it, feel free. And especially regarding the end of it. Are we risking here by trying to regulate it, by putting ethics first, or by trying to interact with the market to protect ethical points? Are we hampering AI development in Europe? Does this even matter in a sense of if we don't do it, somebody else will do it? So first, are we hampering AI development in Europe by trying to be more ethical and privacy conscious? And then B, does that matter? Because somebody else will do it. So Vince or Inga, who wants to go first?
Well, I can answer kind of quickly that, yeah, we're hampering it, just like we're hampering kind of weapon production. Yeah. Cool. We go like, no, we don't want anything. We want the good thing. And I mean, we can't compete with China and the US and India and whatevs in terms of like data quantity anyway. But I think we have to step away from this whole more data, more computing power, more good. Because it's just not. I mean, training this language model, GPT-3, has the same carbon footprint as 57 human lives. I mean, just kind of bigger just isn't better. And I'm very happy that the EU just kind of realizes that and says that we're not going to make anything. We're going to make a good thing. And I think that's the level of ambition we kind of have to try to just have.
That's a great answer, Inga. I don't want to put pressure on Vince, but that was a great answer. So Vince, give me your answer.
Maybe just very briefly to touch upon this, just give a bit more nuance to this question. I think this is not black or white. So I think different countries can come to different conclusions where the level is of what kind of level of privacy is still acceptable to a certain country or population. I think we have like a hard boundary where at a certain point there is no privacy anymore, which would be bad. But we already see today that there are certain, even between countries, I would say both countries have privacy. There are countries like Germany that take it really seriously, and others have a more lax approach, and we would still say that is still okay. So I think we sometimes need to understand that privacy is, of course, it's a good. It's something that we want to protect, but we can use the data also for some other good. For example, helping sick people. And sometimes in these discussions, I have the feeling people are given the choice: either we have privacy, then everything is good, or we don't have privacy and then everything is bad. And that's a little bit too black and white for my taste.
That's great. And I know that the privacy point is a very, very special point. And I actually wanted to send the word to Idoia and Delfina anyway, but I would do it adding a bit to that question. So what is the role of governments in this whole situation then? If we have, as Inga and Vince said, this is not all bad, to be a bit slower, to pay a bit more attention, to make something of more quality is good in itself. What is the role of governments and, let's say, state actors in general in hampering, helping AI, guiding AI into certain directions? So Idoia had her hand raised, so I'm going to give it to Idoia first to answer, and then Delfina, I would like to hear your opinion.
Yeah, just one thing before answering the other question.
Of course.
Yeah, I think it's time to give some responsibility to consumers. I mean, it's not a matter of, I think it's important not only just to rely on what the EU is going to say, or the legislation, the general legislation about something is going to say, and about privacy specifically. I think it's time that consumers start seeing what, for example, just talking about one product. I have been talking with some people that think that it would be good to label the different products and services as it was like some kind of food or bottle, like the label that you could have in a bottle, in which, for example, could say the risk that this person is going to have in terms of privacy or this kind of things. So consumers, it could be up to every consumer to decide if consuming that specific product or not, depending on the risk that this product or service could have. But as I said, like in the previous conversations, in the previous talks, I think it's important to educate these consumers, so these consumers start getting more criteria in order to decide to consume some products or services. And it's a matter of giving more responsibility to consumers also.
I love that point, and I am a big believer on the role of consumers in this whole thing. But I'll listen to Delfina first. Delfina, what's your point?
I agree with Inga on the hampering of some actors with hard regulation. It has, it is inevitable, especially with smaller players in the industry that don't necessarily have the capacity to adapt as quickly as they would like to regulation. But I think the EU is playing the long game in this fight because, and we discussed AI in healthcare previously. Where do you think an extra European patient would like to be treated with his, very much personal healthcare data in a country which values privacy of that data or not? So I guess we will reap benefits in the long run if we base our AI pathway on trustworthy AI, which is it's a buzzword, I understand, but I think it is truly what we are seeing the EU moving towards. And coming back on another point that Inga made, which I found really interesting, that she's very much in favor of hard law and regulation. I'm just wondering whether we'll be able to keep up the pace. And I think GDPR is a good example of that. It's there, it's a step forward, but it still lacks a lot of what is needed. So I guess that in the discussion, we're shifting more towards maybe a mix of hard and soft law that kind of counterbalances the fact that technology is advancing faster than our governments could ever keep up with. And at the same time, we need something that balances out the very long time that usually we see in politics and policy making as a whole. So that's maybe more of a no, I don't want to create a provocative statement towards Inga, but I see it moving.
Absolutely do it.
Do it. There's nobody here. But before you even make your provocative statement towards Inga, I would like to press you a bit, Delfina, on one of the points you made, and then I will invite Vince to correct me if I'm wrong. You said next time that a patient will have to be treated, would he choose the place which takes care of his privacy the best? And I was thinking here, the patient would take it where he gets the best care. And what if the algorithm that was very unethically collected, let's say a Chinese algorithm or something made in China but being used in Singapore, just provides a 3% increase higher than the European algorithm in the treatment of certain disease? Do you think that the European consumer would think like, no, I'm not going to take the more efficient one because it's unethical? Or do you think that he would say, long term, this is the best for me? Is efficiency more important than ethics for a consumer? Edayo will take it later on, but Delfina has to go through this first.
Well, I guess it very much depends what the consumer values as most important, right? And I think that is also a product of the kind of society we live in. So if we create what is the top value, then consumers will follow. And I guess at this stage in Europe, we are very much focusing on the narrative of having a very, privacy-oriented pathway towards that. And again, I can speak for myself or for the people I've spoken about this in the field, that they would probably mostly want to take a healthcare a pathway that protects their privacy. And of course, I guess that the standard of healthcare in Europe is still quite high. I still don't see the trade-off as striking as maybe it could be between other parts of the world.
Maybe I can just quickly add on this, because it actually, the answer fits to both what Delfina and Idoia said. And to make the panel modes more interesting, I disagree with both of them. So that's first of all, I think trusting the customer is a really, really bad idea. Let's look at climate change. Let's look at industrially produced meat. All of these things, customers are really, really bad in doing anything good. So I completely think that customers need to be forced to do the right thing. Waiting for them to do the right thing. I mean, I don't want to go too much into it, but also look at the COVID situation. Everybody's supposed to know what we have to do by now. Customers, forget it. So this is really, really, really a bad idea. And regarding the fact that the patient would choose trustworthy AI place. So I do not agree with a lot that he said, but I think it was the German healthcare minister who said privacy is the luxury of healthy people. And in the moment somebody is sick and they can get potential treatment, they won't care. They absolutely won't care. And this is okay. We don't do policy by asking those who really need something, right? That's okay. It's really it's like you don't. That's why we don't let the person decide. I don't know whose significant other was murdered, what should happen to the murderer. So we don't ask the people affected mostly by, when we make decisions by balancing things. So I think neither the patient nor the customer is the right person to ask. We need to have level-headed regulation, and that's hard boundaries, as Inga said. So that is my opinion here.
I actually think that Delfina's point was also very much in the line of making some hard boundaries first and cutting off what is completely prohibited. And then after that, having a bit of choice for the consumer after you kind of cut off what's the most dangerous and you give a bit of freedom. And Idoia, I know that every time that I give the word to you, I add something on top, and it is my job as the host. And you make whatever argument you want to make. And then on top of that, you're going to make the argument, does it make sense to make ethics one unique set of ethics for everybody? Isn't that what Vince just said, that if we're talking about Europe, as Delfina was, privacy is important and I want to be in a system that cares about me, but if you're sick, then privacy, it's not important at all. Or maybe putting my Latin American hat, privacy is just not the top concern of a sick person in Brazil at the moment. So make your points and then start the conversation. Does it make sense to have a code of ethics for everybody?
Yeah, I prefer. Okay, it is okay. Just I say just a couple of things of the previous things. Vince, I was talking about the consumer's responsibility, just in terms of in the case that they themselves use a specific product or service, so they affect the consumer directly. For example, if you want to consume one specific product, you decide as yourself. I'm not trusting the whole humanity. I don't trust in the whole humanity for doing one thing, but that I was referring myself into that every person decide what kind of if they are going to consume any product or services that has AI systems, that they personally decide if they consume that product. For example, if they are going to affect directly their privacy. So they decide if they want to consume that product or service, but just individually. I'm not talking about trusting humanity as a whole. And another thing, we were talking about the efficiency of the algorithms of artificial intelligence when talking about the health, about the using it in a treatment and I think the matter is of we should be talking about the efficiency of the doctors themselves as humans, not talking about the efficiency of the algorithms. But because, as I said, I think that we should keep humans at the center and just use these artificial intelligence systems as a machine to help humans. So at the end, the efficiency would be of the doctor themselves, but not not the machine efficiency. The final decision in important areas as health should be of the humans, of the doctors, not the machines. Okay, and now talking about the what you just said about if it is could you please repeat the question, Nicolas?
Of course. And after Idoia makes his point, I would like to throw a poll to the panelists to take a vote on something. So Idoia, the question for you was, does it make sense to have an ethics code for everybody?
Okay.
Because every customer is different, or we can think European Union first. Like even in the European Union, there's a huge difference between consumers, but we can also go a bit bigger here. Does it make sense to have a worldwide ethics and AI code?
Yeah, there have been like hundreds already of international codes of ethics for artificial intelligence. And every year we have like plenty of them. And at the end, we realize that it's impossible to have an international ethics for everybody, because everyone in every culture has a specific point of view about some specific things. So I think it's very important to personalize in every culture, even in every country, and personalize for cases, even cases of use, not only about for cultures, but even for cases of use. I think it's important for every government of every country to elaborate their specific code of ethics for artificial intelligence. Of course, all of them will have like a base, like they will share some bases, but at the end, the different governments should make their efforts in order to adapt all of these ethics to their peculiarities of their specific culture. Because, as you know, Nicolas, maybe in Latin America, there's people think differently when they approach the different decisions, maybe than people in Germany, or imagine people in China or in other places.
Exactly. No, I completely agree. And having lived in China for a while, it was even more surprising, despite being Latin American, knowing a less concerned country. So we're going to take because I really want to engage with the audience that we have right now. We have such great commentaries, and a couple of those actually can be seen as a vote. So regarding the question from Samir, he says that the fear about AI comes from a loss of control, so that we could lose control of an autonomous system. Among the panelists, raise your hand if you're afraid that we would lose control about critical autonomous systems in the future. Are you afraid of that? Is that a fear that you have? No, that's what I thought. I also thought, oh, Vince has a bit.
Define future, because I
Let's
often
throw here 5 years. Let's throw 5 years. A small
window. I
window.
often have these discussions, and then you realize people talk about what could happen in 2050, and then I'm like, 2050, a lot of things could happen. Maybe everybody's dead by 2050. So I like to approach these things in a practical manner. So like, what is really? I mean, I also like to have like theoretical futurist discussions, but you have to define what you talk about. So if you, in a futurist sense, I would say, of course, it's possible. Many things are possible. When we talk about 5 to 10 years, then my answer would be probably not.
I think what's interesting on this question, and when we bring to the panel, is the word afraid. Because afraid implies that this is a pressing concern. This is something that you're worried, like mostly on not a daily basis, but it's something in your mind. And I think that's exactly as Vince said, some of the things that could make you afraid are so far off in the future. We have so many other issues to cover before we get there that you couldn't just classify them as afraid for you right now. But Inga, what do you want to say?
Well, it kind of depends on what you mean by losing control. I mean, I'm sure that if I had seen 10 years ago how much time I spend on my phone, that would have made me afraid. So I'm not afraid that there will be a machine whose off button I can't reach anymore because it's hindering me. But if I think about kind of gradually being like dragged into some system that I wouldn't have chosen for myself, if I could see the change happening quickly, then yes. So it depends on whether that's included in the question.
That's a very, very good point. And that is also a point that I want to make on a final question about transparency in a second. So I'm going to put a pin on that quick second. Idoia, do you want to make a mention?
Yeah, I was going to say that I'm more afraid of humans or some politicians making decisions in the next years, really.
That's a good point. You were making a point before about trust, and I was thinking, I barely trust myself. How would I trust? Like, I wouldn't trust an AI based on my own data, you know? Like, no, I made many mistakes before. You shouldn't learn from me. So we have a very interesting point, and here I know we are all Europeans in a sense. So here, let's move a bit away from that mindset. But De Crayer, I don't know if he's French. He asks, would you trust an algorithm provider that does not care about privacy? Then let's think at a healthcare provider or something. If there was a provider of healthcare right now offering the cheapest plan or the best care, but you knew that they were not privacy conscious, would you sign up for it? Would that be a deal breaker for you in, say, healthcare, in education, even if it was the best university, even if it was the best hospital? Do you think that not caring about privacy or not being seen as being caring about privacy is a deal breaker for you as a consumer?
I think I think I made my point clear. I'm more curious to hear the other ones.
Would anybody, if nobody takes it, I would take it. Like, just because I have to be the devil advocate at some point.
But guys, look at the products you're using. You're not using privacy conscious products. I mean, what's your browser? What's your social media thingy? How do you chat? Where do you find your information? I mean, even if anybody here has a high enough salary to drive a Tesla, I mean, guys.
This is exactly the point where if you poll people like, do you think it's important that animals should be treated properly for meat production? And then everybody says, yes, sure. And then when they're in the supermarket, oh, of course I buy the cheapest. Do you think I'm stupid? So this is also the same thing. So would you use an algorithm? That, of course I never would. And I'll post about it on Facebook or on Insta now. It's simply the same problem. Yeah. But I would also like to add just one thing. Maybe we don't have so much time left. I just see it.
Exactly, but, I know. Yeah.
When I said I would not trust the customer, I just wanted to add that this is not a problem of people being bad. This is a problem of what is called the social dilemma, which is a simple thing that affects all people. That if everybody did the right thing, then we would all be better off. But if an individual starts doing it, they have negative consequences because the others are not doing it. And to solve this problem, it's not enough to tell people that they are bad. You have to help them to get through the social dilemma, which is then probably nothing we can talk about today. I have an answer for it. You will hear it maybe some other time.
Sure.
But this is really something that is it's simple human psychology and the social dilemma. So do not tell people you are bad because you're doing it. We have to help them, and us ourselves. We have to help us to get not affected by social dilemma.
And because we're running out of time, and unfortunately some of our speakers need to leave sharply after the talk, one final question, and just a reminder, we'll be meeting later on at Wonder to have like some networking time, so we can keep this discussion going for a bit.
So if someone wants to hear how to breach the social dilemma, meet us in the networking session.
If you want to talk about anything else, just go to the table that I am in, and then Vince is in the other one. So if you're interested in any other topic. But
sorry to Nicholas, I just posted the link to the networking session. So meet us there after the last question.
And just to close off, and it's a shame because I also wanted to ask Inga about transparency, but I don't think we'll have enough time, because I really want to make a question that is important every time that we talk about ethics. And this is something else that Chris Ward, a very good friend, already mentioned in the comments. What can we practically do about it? How can we practically improve it? And at this point, I know that we represent different parts of society, of AI development. So let's try to think it a bit for a second, and what can be done right now from the point of view of researchers, from the point of view of developers, from the point of view of government, from the point of view of consumers, what can be done right now to improve the situation of ethics in AI? I'll leave it up to the panel who wants to go first, but also feel free to take a couple of seconds.
I'll quickly start because my answer is short. Chris, you asked basically verbatim, what are we doing? What is the action we take? We started by organizing a panel discussion. So
exactly.
That's the first thing we did.
That is Vince actually being able to live to his New Year's resolutions about improving ethics in AI. I'm going to do a panel about this. Great stuff. Who wants to go next?
I can give it a shot.
Delphina?
Sure. This is the part where we reestablish some hope in those who've joined us, right? Well, I mean, on my side, this is what we try to do where I'm working at the Future Society. So we're basically working on projects that are so-called AI for good. So to give you very tangible examples of the kind of work that we're doing, we have a project called AI Against Modern Slavery, which basically is using natural language processing to, I'm saying read, quote unquote, thousands and thousands of pages of reports that companies have to produce in Australia and the UK under a specific law that has just been passed. And we'll be able to assess the quality of those reports and if in their supply chain they are actually using modern slavery and trying to, of course, contract it. And then we've also been working on other great stuff with the Global Partnership on AI, which is JPI for short, which is this multi-stakeholder international initiative, which tries to, what we were mentioning at the very beginning, bridging the gap between the theory and then actually putting in practice what we're discussing. And we've just released 2 reports, which are the products of this partnership. We've skimmed through hundreds of different AI initiatives, AI for good initiatives, and we've selected those who are the most promising in helping achieve this, the Sustainable Development Goals in responsible adoption of AI and AI in pandemic response. So that's also, I guess, very tangible examples of how, as we've discussed, AI is not this magical wand that you just touch and everything is fixed, but it can surely be used to have a major positive impact in society. So that's, I guess, that's how
I
I'll
think I
close
saw
it.
Idoia making a small sign with her hand. Do you want to go next, Idoia?
Yes, okay. I think that this AI we're doing several things also to improve the ethics of artificial intelligence nowadays. I think it is very important, as I said, to create consciousness into the different managers of different companies, not only in the data scientists, but also in the managers who tell the data scientists to develop a specific product and service. So I think it's very important to do that. This AI, we are doing a big effort to do that, to create this consciousness, which is, I consider that is like very important thing. And also another thing that is important that we also are doing in Odyssea, where we are trying to do in not only in the Spanish culture, but also in Latin America or in other partners that we have in Odyssea, is the education. We are trying to promote the education, to educate a lot, to give a lot of talks, but not only to professionals, but also to the civil society, to every, no matter the age, and to tell them, to give them knowledge about what is the real thing about artificial intelligence, all the different things that we have been talking today in this panel. So they keep aside all of these producers about artificial intelligence that they have seen in the science fiction movies and center themselves in the situation. I know that Vince and Inga, you don't have a lot of confidence into consumers, but maybe if we give them a little bit
But
more.
I have, Idoia. I have confidence in consumers. I have.
But maybe if we give them a little bit more of education, maybe, I don't know, maybe they can start feeling a little bit better, and a little bit more scared, less scared, and a little bit more focused in the things that they have to be scared about. And maybe there are some things also.
Just to throw a point there in the door, it's not even about trusting the consumers for me. It's about believing that the only way to truly fix this problem is through consumers. To depend on people actually making better decisions, not by the few, but by the many, But I'm not a panelist today, thank God. So Inga, what about you? How can we make this better?
Yeah, I think you guys kind of rounded it up perfectly then. I don't know if this grumpy physicist kind of can top that. No, I don't think there's anything I can add to what Delfina and Idoia said. And I kind of just, stay away from populism. That's what I have.
I'm going to help you out in one quick second then, Inga, because I had a question that I couldn't ask you before. So on making ethics and AI better, what about transparency? Should we be aiming for not only AI that is better and is safer and everything else, but also AI that is more understandable? Is that the path maybe to what Idoia is saying of making consumers more aware, or maybe what Delfina was saying about understanding how to place the rules and what is allowed and what is not allowed? Do you think transparency plays a large role in this?
This is a very large question for a very short amount of time, sir.
I am a bad panel host, that's for sure. So
okay, so no, you're
quick.
not. No, you're not, honey. Okay. I would say that transparency and understanding or explainability are two widely different things. Transparency is something we can choose. Explainability may not even be possible, right? It depends on what you mean by explanation. Explainable AI, which is what I do, is a very young field. If it's about convincing stories, then yes, we can do it. But if it's about understanding what a system that can do stuff that we don't know how to do is actually doing, then that might not even be possible. So I'd go like, yay transparency, yay explainability, with a kind of a little disclaimer at the end there that we will have to put some research money into the latter.
I think that's a perfect way to end this panel. If you want to engage a bit more with us, join us in the networking session. I think that there was quite a few points left unasked, so we can still have a bit of fun. I thank you all the panelists for today. First, Vince, Delfina, Idoia, and Inga for sharing their views. This was an extremely exciting panel for me. I think we managed to go much deeper on the discussion than we normally are able to, and from many different directions. I would love to be able to pick up this conversation in a future time. And then I thank everybody that watched us from the beginning, everybody that came in a bit late, And if you're watching this in the mid of 2021 or 2022 on YouTube and you don't understand what we're talking about, we didn't manage to make it better fast enough, and AI has run over. So
if your
thank you very
robot
much.
overlord allows you to watch it, of course.
If the robot overlord allows you to watch it. Thank you very much for everybody. Have a great day. Stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And
Thank you,
see you in the
everyone.
networking session. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.